Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is James and I'm continuing on with this Balsa USA Smoothie build. So in this video I'm going to be building up this area of the fuselage known as the turtle deck, right behind this area behind the canopy. It's this sort of rounded off conical shaped area of the upper fuselage. So in order to do that, what I need to do is I have some formers here. And I have these 4 formers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're going to go along 1, 2, 3, 4 here, basically on top of the fuselage like this, down here. And then up against that is going to be some balsa sheeting, which is going to be placed like right here. And it's going to have a little bit of an angle on it. And then on top of that, it's going to get capped with this balsa block, which is going to go like that on there. And then this is going to get shaped and rounded off, so at the end it's going to look like this. Here's a sort of a cross section through the top of it there. And then a couple little things to note is like this sheeting, for example, down here is going to have to be beveled because it's going to be on an angle, so it needs to be beveled a little bit so it has a nice kind of flush meet with this lower portion of the fuselage down here. And what else? Yeah, and so this top part actually is not going to get shaped yet, because what happens later is this turtle deck area sort of stops right about here, and this little block stops right about here, and then down here after you put on the fin, there's going to be a couple little blocks that support the fin, and that's all going to have to get blended together. So we kind of hold off on doing the final shaping of the upper portion of this little block up here until later. Alright, so something else that I did since the last video is I trimmed off, you can kind of see here, I trimmed off this portion of this control rod tubing that we put in last time. I basically just cut that off, and it's now flush with the fuselage side there, as you can tell, like that. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side real quick. I'm going to cut this piece off also, so we'll do that now. Alright, so it's a nice rainy day out today. It's going to be nice to come in here and just do some building. So if you do hear something in the background, you may be picking up maybe the rain hitting the roof. I'm in the garage where I do my build, so you may pick some of that up. And also I went out last Friday and I did some flying, had a nice flying day. I took the barnstormer out, just did a couple quick flights. I got a little bit of video of that, which I'm going to share probably in an upcoming video. It's not the fanciest video. It's kind of hard to record while you're flying, you know. I had a GoPro attached to my head, or a sport cam attached to my head. It wasn't a GoPro. I think it's an 8-man. And I don't get the best footage, but I'm going to go ahead and share it anyhow, so I'll be posting that pretty soon. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on this turtle deck, and we'll see how far we can get. So I'm going to try to be gentle with this because this is sort of delicate back here, especially since doesn't have this little support back in here yet. And I'm just going to use a long blade like this. And usually this tubing, well, I did it on this side, it's relatively soft. It's not like it's a really hard plastic, so you can kind of gently cut into it. And if I take my time, I should be able to just kind of trim this, just kind of slice it off. You got to be careful though. And the reason I'm using such a long blade is because I want my blade to be flush as I cut. If I was using something like this, it would be hard to kind of get that kind of flush angle in there, or it wouldn't be possible actually to get to be flush. I'd be cutting it and it'd be kind of messy. So I'm using this long blade, and I'm going to try to just gently trim it. This blade's not as sharp as I thought it was going to be. Okay, there it goes. That actually kind of snapped that little piece right there. It's all right. Came out good. So there's that little guy in there. And again, this is going to be covered with Monokote, so we're not going to see that. And then, actually, let me grab a piece of extra here. So you can see that's how it's going to go. The control rod's going to go in there, and it'll be. Now the thing about this is that I'm really actually pretty close to where the control horns are going to be. This exit area is pretty far back. toward the tail end of the airplane. So sometimes you may need to actually, if for some reason, if like my exit hole is like back here somewhere, kind of further back, you may actually need to extend the tubing, kind of like how it was before, maybe extend it outside of the fuselage a little bit to help support the control rod when it's kind of out here in space. I don't have to worry about that here because I'm so close. So it's going to engage the control horn like right here, pretty close. So there is, and again, there is flexibility in it, so I can kind of connect it to the control horn where I need to. And then, yeah, so we'll just go from there. It's going to be covered with Monokote, so all you're going to see at the end of it all is going to be this little exit area right there. So that should work out okay. We'll see what happens when we get to actually connecting it all together. Sometimes things, the way you plan it, don't always work out in the end. So hopefully this will work, and we'll see. Actually, I want to note one more thing. I think the reason, so this kind of snapped, what happened is I was cutting it, I kind of got mostly through it, and then you hear it kind of pop. I think it's because this blade was actually not as sharp as it should have been, or wasn't very as sharp as it could have been, I guess is the way to put it. On this side, I actually used this one when I took it off, and I was able to kind of get through here and just shave it off there nicely. And this is a relatively new blade, so this one cut a lot easier. I was able to kind of cut through it nicely and smooth like that. This one, I think it got all the way through to this point, and then it was kind of you had a little bit left, and it kind of snapped off. But like I said, it worked out okay. It's still recessed, so it's okay. So yeah, a sharper blade would have been better for that last little step I did. So first things first, go ahead and pop these out of here. I'm going to be curious to see how this works because, as you remember, we put a little bit of a bow. A little bit of a bow was put into the fuselage by putting these cross braces here, and I'm curious to see if the kit actually, with these formers, will actually match that. I hope it does. There. All right, so once again, I'm going to use my handy 1-2-3 block. Now, they make these, as you've seen, they make them in solid, and they make them with all these holes in them, which I'm assuming is to make it lighter. So I'm going to use my lighter ones for stuff like this. I'm going to put this guy up here like that. Let me get these little guys out of the way. And we'll put our former on here. So this should all work. That now. I'll use the block to kind of hold it nice and straight and vertical relative to the side of the fuselage here. So let me get my CA. All right, make sure I get it lined up. This one's just going to go flush with the former there, or the bulkhead, right about there, just like that. Oh, my little tip is leaking. Let's get that out of there. Let me do another one. All right, let's try this again. A little bit of that on there. Probably going to be a little bit tricky because that's plywood and this is the balsa, so it's always a little bit harder to get it to kind of initially stick. Hopefully I didn't stick my, there we go, like that. And I'm going to give it a little bit more on this side. Okay, I'm also going to add a little bit of the thick CA to kind of help bond it a little bit better. Just because, as I mentioned, going up against plywood, I find that sometimes the thin CA doesn't always do the trick. It's good to kind of hit it again with the thick CA. And as I did get a comment about using, just plain old wood glue, which is also a really good idea. Wood glue is like your basic something like this, like your Titebond. This is a really good choice for building planes. I agree with the comment I got that you could set everything up and then kind of glue it all at one time. If I were doing that on something like this, of course I'd probably have to pin this or tape it or something to get it straight and then use it. But it's definitely an option, and that wood glue is very strong. And the nice thing about something like that wood glue is that because it takes a while to set up, it soaks into the wood nicely. So that's one of the reasons it gives you a really good bond. So not a bad idea if you want to try using the wood glue like that. It takes you a little bit longer to build. It's not as easy to just kind of move on, but it definitely is a good option. Okay, so I just did kind of a bonehead move. I didn't put my wax paper down, and I glued the bottom drip down there, and it glued my fuselage to my plan, so I had to kind of cut it off so you can kind of see why it's really important. There's a good example. So let me get my wax paper down here, and we'll continue on. All right, there we go. All right, so this next one is going to go right here. And this one's going to go right on here. Now this one kind of sets in, sort of recessed a little bit. It goes in and kind of meets that cross brace. That's right there. There is some leeway, I guess, or there is some play in this, so I can kind of adjust it. It's not going exactly where it shows on the plan right here. But I'm going to line it up so that the edge of the former lines up with the inside edge of this plywood plank that's on the outside. I think that's the most important. So if it moves this way or that way, I don't want it to come past that. I don't want it to be on this side or kind of come into it, because then it would bulge out. And I don't want it to be on the inside, because then you'd have a space between it. So I'm going to just try to get as close as I can to where it's just flush with that inner seam. And again, I'll go with my thick CA. Now this one's actually balsa on balsa, so it definitely soaks in better. So this one's actually a little bit different. It doesn't line up with this last little bulkhead over here. It's actually about 1 inch forward, and I marked 1 inch on both sides just to kind of keep it straight. And it is pretty small, so I don't think I really need to have a square or the block on here to kind of keep it straight up and down. I mean, I can if I want. I can do it like this. Again, I don't want to glue down my block. Okay. And I guess I'll give it some thick CA like the others. Okay, so these look pretty good like this. Now the next step is going to be to take my sheeting. Here it is. And this sheeting, let me get this out of the way, is going to go like this down the side, and it's going to have to be trimmed, sort of kind of make that taper, and it only goes to, it's only going to go to this last block, and then it gets trimmed off back here. And then, as I mentioned, let me grab this other block. There'll be another block on both sides of the fin, or the vertical stabilizer. On both sides there'll be a block to help support that. That'll kind of butt up against this part, and that will blend in with this top piece. So this top piece is going to go on here like this, and then that'll blend on both sides of the vertical stabilizer like that. And of course then you have the side on here. So this piece, as I mentioned, needs to be beveled because it needs to make this angle. If I put this straight on here like this, there would be a little gap because of its angle. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of bevel off the inside corner of the sheet, and that way it'll be flush with this outer edge of the fuselage panel right there. All right, so I'm just going to carefully just kind of cut off this corner on this thing, or this edge. And for something like this, it doesn't have to be perfect, because even if there is a little teeny kind of gap or something on here, the Monokote's going to cover that up, or whatever covering material is used. But we like to kind of get it as close as we can. Okay, so I'm going to take my sand here. All right, so if you can kind of see that, that's kind of what we're trying to get at. We're trying to kind of eliminate that gap. If it was like this, there'd be this kind of gap in there, right? And then by putting that little bevel in there, you sort of help try to eliminate that a little bit. So, okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that to both of these sheets, and then I'll come back and we'll start making measurements so that we can cut this and stick it on. Okay, so I got my two pieces beveled. I'll put this one aside, and we'll put this guy right on here. I'm going to go a little bit beyond it because I can always trim it back a little bit later, give myself a little bit of room, about 1/8 of an inch or so, like there. And then what I need to do is I just need to mark it right down here, and that's where I need to cut it off. So let me grab something to mark it with. How about a pencil? And it'll be like right about there. Okay. And again, I got a little bit of room. So I can go ahead and I can cut this off of here. Now at this point, it's only about 1/4 inch thick, which means I'm going to cut this off kind of perpendicular. Oops. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room. It doesn't have to be exact because I'm not making a long cut here. I'm only concerned about the last little 1/4 inch being sort of perpendicular with the edge of the sheeting. So I think I'm good. Have a nice little piece of scrap balsa there. And this guy, well, then is going to go up on here, like so. That, and all the way over to here. Okay. Now what I want to do is I'm going to pin this on here because I want to mark the top of all of those little formers. Then hopefully I can draw a straight line and cut this sheet. If I can't, oops, there goes my camera. That's going to go like that. So I'm just going to use my T-pins. Let's just kind of hold it in place while I mark it here. And I probably could do this by just holding it and marking it, but I'm going to do this with the pins just to kind of keep it secure. This way I can check it. I don't know if I can go into this top one or not. Let's try it. I don't want to split it. Okay, like that. And you can kind of see here the bow in there, so that's nice. And you kind of see down here, there is sort of a little gap forming because it does curve. It does have that bow in it, so it does curve. So what that tells me, see this gap? I can try to get in there. We'll see if I can make that gap close up as we pull it together. But the bottom line is that this is a straight piece of balsa. This portion of the fuselage is curved, and then I'm going down on these sort of right angles. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to get a perfect seam over there, but we'll get as close as we can. We can always fill it in if we need to. Yeah, it's kind of a tricky little spot here. That one's at the top. And I'm going a little bit above it, so I will be able to do some trimming. But yeah, just because of that curve, it's not going to be like a flat, kind of straight seam all the way back. It's going to have a curve in it, so it's going to be hard to kind of close that up. But again, it's not going to be important here because, again, it's going to be covered with Monokote, or you're not going to see that. And if I wanted to, I can put a little bit of filler in there to fill that little seam, but I don't think it's that important. Okay, let's pull this off of here and we'll cut it. All right, well, kind of like with these camera angles, sometimes it's hard to get a good position, so that was a little bit awkward, but hopefully I didn't mess it up. This will go on here. Yeah, it'll go something like that. And then what's going to happen is once this is on, I'll have to come back and just kind of trim this to make it nice and flat with these top parts of these formers. Okay, let's go ahead and do the other one. In fact, on this one, well, I don't need to. What I'll do is I'll put a little R on here for the right-hand side, just to help me keep things straight. All right, so I think I put a little bit of curve into it, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep moving on here. So I'm going to start with one side, this side here. I'm going to go ahead and use my CA here. And we'll start with this one former, and then I'll work my way back I'll probably go pin this one in after this one sets, and then we'll do the middle ones. Okay, so I'm kind of, as I'm doing this, I'm changing the way I'm gonna approach it. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna try to just pin this piece on here, and then I'll go back and hit it and I'll glue it. Because maybe I can get the bow out that way a little easier. A lot of times I'm holding these things down and I'm just kind of shooting it with the CA and it works pretty good, but sometimes I do remember that I need to be a little more on it with some pins and things. Okay, well, I apologize for that. I think that probably looked a little awkward. At first I thought I was going to be able to sort of like get it tacked down with the CA and then kind of work my way with the thin CA and kind of just bring it along. But then I found it was getting a little bit difficult to do that, obviously, so I decided to go ahead and pin it in place and then go ahead and hit it like that. So I'll do that on the other side now. All right, so there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and let this sit for a little while because I do have the thick CA on there. We'll let that, takes a little bit longer for that to cure. We'll let this sit for a while, then I'll come pull the pins out, and then we can trim this down so that we can put this guy on top of here. Time to take the pins out. Let's go ahead and kind of loosen these up a little bit. You can hear them crack because they got a little bit of glue on them. Pull these out and we'll see what it looks like. Let me get my tray over here. All right, so the next step is going to be to shave these sides down to become flush with the tops of these formers. And then I'll trim off kind of like this excess along the front here and also in the back. So let me carefully do that. Okay, so I know this is going to take some sort of eyeballing to get this right. Obviously I want this to be nice and straight. Maybe there's a different way to do this other than the way I'm doing it. But what I decided to do was I'm going to use a straight edge and kind of see where the tops of the formers are, like here. And I'm just going to draw a line to help as a guide to sort of get me close, because I don't want to get it crooked. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line on here. I'll kind of connect the dots to the tops of these formers where I think they are. I'm just kind of estimating. I'm looking at it from here and here, kind of on the front, kind of lining up this steel ruler, kind of like that. And I'm hoping that this will kind of give me a nice guide. If there's another way, let me know. I guess there probably are different ways of doing it, but okay. So hopefully that'll kind of help me keep my, as I'm kind of sanding this and cutting it, this hopefully will keep me sort of on track. So the thing about this now is that now it's pretty close to being at the right sort of location in terms of it being sort of meeting the top of these formers. I'll play with it a little bit longer, and then of course this little block's going to go up on top of here like this. And then one thing I noticed is that the block is not actually wide enough in a few spots. And I'm not sure, I think that's just the kit. As you can see here, if I put it down on here, it actually doesn't meet. See that? You can kind of pick this up right here, but it's actually not wide enough right in here. And again, this is kind of where these cross braces kind of come together, and it kind of bows, I guess it kind of bows out a little bit. I'm not really sure. But in any case, this is built per plan. But this block is actually a little bit on the thin side. Should be, maybe it'll be okay if when I sand it, maybe it'll look all right, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, so I need to just kind of work on this a little bit, sort of get, I have a little bit of a gap back in here, and I need to work that. And I can probably also bend this down a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and work on this a little bit longer and try to get this straighter, and then we'll glue this on top here. So I worked with this a little while, like I just mentioned, and I got this to be pretty flat, pretty straight. And this block actually is probably a little bit, this block itself seems like it's a little bit, and I'm not going to say it's warped, but you know, it's not perfect. And I found that this orientation right here kind of fits the best. So I'm going to put a little T up there for a top, and we'll fit that on like that. And then you'll see that I can just go ahead and press it down a little bit, but there it goes. Oops. It'll be on here just like that. Okay. So now I'm just going to go ahead and set this up and glue it. I think for this one, I don't know if I can get clamps on this or not. I think I'm just going to go ahead and use masking tape. I'm going to tape it straight down, and then this may be a case for my Titebond. We'll see. I think I may do it that way. All right, so let's go ahead and use our Titebond here. I like this stuff because it has this cool little applicator right on the tip there. It's kind of flat. It comes out sort of like a little ribbon. So I'm going to put it on here, and then I can wipe off the excess. All right, so this painter's tape, which I do use a lot, isn't as sticky, or doesn't have as much of a, isn't as strong as sort of like your basic traditional masking tape. And sometimes it's better to have that so it doesn't stick as much, but in this case I want to make sure I can really get this to stay down. So here we go. I'll just put a couple light pieces on right now, and I can make some adjustments as we go. All right, so now you can tell, well, so what I did is I put the block on here, and then I used, just because I just wanted to get it sort of lined up initially, I just put the short strips on to kind of get it set to where I wanted to put it. And then I went back with the longer strips, and I pressed down, and I kind of pressed down the sides, and then I wrapped them underneath here, and that'll kind of make them nice and secure. And I don't know if you can kind of see, probably can't see down inside there or not, but some of that glue was kind of squished through, so I can tell I have a nice, sort of a nice little bond that's going to be there. And so now this is going to have to sit now overnight, and then I come back and take this off of here. So this sat for a while. I let this sit overnight, and now I'm go ahead and take the tape off. You can see I taped it up really well, like sort of like a mummy, and got this block secured. So let me go ahead and pull the tape off, and we'll see how it looks. So this is looking pretty good. It's nice and secured on there now. And so the next step is going to be to sort of get this to blend against the sides and do a little bit of sanding. Okay, so I'm going to call it good for this video, and we'll continue on with this build in the next. So until then, thanks for watching my channel, and we'll see you next time.